Hey, I'm Andy. Welcome back to the Coach's Corner. We have Tim Murray here. He's the host of VSIN Primetime, which is weeknights on VSIN. How you doing today, Tim?
I'm great, man. Yeah, it's getting that time of year. We are inching closer to the start of football season. I know there's another type of football going on, sweeping the world right now, but the throwing type of football is not too far away.
Yeah, the football without the U in it, right? So, Tim, I want to start first, talk about a little bit about team market efficiency. You and the VSIN team just wrapped up your massive comprehensive breakdown, all 32 NFL teams. We don't have to go into all 32 teams. But when you're looking at the entire NFL landscape coming up this season from a betting perspective, which specific division or maybe which cluster of teams do you think the market has priced completely wrong?
Ooh, that's a great angle to look at it, completely wrong. I think if you just kind of look at big picture, a handful of divisions are pretty fascinating. The NFC South, it seems like anybody can win that division. You look at the NFC North, where you've got, Lions, Packers, Bears, and kind of a cluster there. The NFC West, obviously, with the addition that the Rams were able to make, bringing in Myles Garrett. They're now the favorite to win that division despite Seattle winning the Super Bowl a year ago. So I guess a division that I would say is priced wrong, man. I'll talk a little bit about the AFC North and AFC East. The Ravens are the odds-on favorite, around minus 110, minus 115. I know a lot of folks listening in are Ravens fans. They're very fascinating, right? When you think about them this year, the struggles they had last year, unable to win the division. Now you've got a new head coach, and then you think about, all right, well, if they're the favorites, who should be second odds? And the Bengals are kind of lurking right there. And a lot of people, I think from a betting standpoint, Andy, are intrigued by the Bengals this year. But there's always the caveat of health with the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow and everything there. So, there's a lot of intrigue there. And then you think about the Trey Hendrickson addition, so you've got that going on as well. And then the AFC East, you've got the New England Patriots coming off of a year in which they go to the Super Bowl, but they benefited massively from their schedule, right? They had the easiest schedule in all football. I thought they got some fortune in the playoffs with injuries from the opposition. So I think some people might look at the Bills being an odds-on favorite there and might scratch their head, but I actually think that's priced accurately, that the Bills are sitting there as the favorite. So to answer your question, kind of circling all the way back, I think the AFC West might be priced a little bit incorrectly in that I think the Chiefs should be bigger favorites. They're plus 160, and I know they're coming off of a tough year, and the Broncos obviously kind of defied all logic in the run that they had. I think Patrick Mahomes, I'm almost confident in saying that he's going to be ready week one. And I think what's not being talked about enough is the injury for Bo Nix. He was hurt, in that AFC Championship game, as we all recall. From the sounds of it, he's been dealing with that all off season long. So, I think the Kansas City Chiefs, even though they are the favorite, in your question, what price is wrong, I think the Chiefs probably should be a shorter favorite. I think they should be around, plus 110, plus 120. So I'm looking at DraftKings right now. I think the Chiefs at plus 160 actually is a decent price. So I guess to answer your question, that would be where I would look.
Okay. Yeah, I always love this time of year, especially when, like you guys over there at VSIN and you fellas and ladies always lay it all out, everything that we us fans kind of forgot about. Like we were bringing up all those things in the AFC East, in the AFC North, and you remember it, but like the Trey Hendrickson thing, all the drama that lasted all season long and then kind of came to a head, and then it just kind of just doesn't disappear for them. But, other sports come in and you start to think about the other sports. I love these refreshers on the NFL. The NFL is probably one of my favorite leagues to watch. So I'm definitely excited, and thank you for that input in there. Now, we do see a surprise team kind of make a deep run every year based on your deep dive into the team rosters and the coaching changes. Which long shot futures bet would you place some money on?
Yeah, so, we always see first to last, and this year is going to be I'm going to air quote, easy answer, is Detroit. They technically were last in the NFC North a year ago, so there's your answer for most common first to last team. NFC East, I think, is pretty intriguing. Obviously, I imagine a lot of folks in your neck of the woods are Commander fans, and you think 2 years ago, the magical run that Washington had and Jaden Daniels' rookie season making it to the NFC Championship for the first time in a quarter century. Then you have a bit of a step back with the injuries. I think Washington is a team that I wouldn't be surprised if they made the playoffs, if they had a little bit of positive regression this year. So their team, certainly that interests me a little bit. But I want to go back to a division that I think is wildly intriguing in the NFC South, right? And, you've got Mike Evans no longer with Tampa. You've got kind of just a cluster down there. What do we expect from Atlanta with Michael Penix being the main guy down there? They have some of the best playmakers in all of football with Pitts and Bijan Robinson. So, if you're looking at the odds board right now, and maybe it's a little bit of a cop-out, but I think a team that certainly could be interesting this year for me that has the longest odds to win the division would be Atlanta. And then I also look at the other South, the AFC South, and, I think the Tennessee Titans, have the potential of making a little bit of noise in that AFC South. So, what do we look at from, Cam Ward in his second year? I'm a big Brian Daboll guy, and him going down there as the offensive coordinator. You think about what he did in Buffalo as Josh Allen's offensive coordinator, and I understand, it ended up going awry in New York, but I still look at what they were able to do with Daniel Jones. I'm not the biggest Daniel Jones guy. So I think year two in Tennessee, got some playmakers down there. I think that division is wide open. I mean, I think Houston really did a good job of beefing up their defensive line yet again in the draft. But, I think Houston, that offense, you get a little bit worried about, the regression we saw from C.J. Stroud. So if you're to take a dart, if you will, and try to throw a winner in the South, I think the two longest shots in those two respective divisions aren't crazy, at the Falcons in the NFC South and the Titans in the AFC South.
Yeah, I agree completely with you. Now, you talked a little bit about some of the best playmakers being in Atlanta. Some player props that we can look at maybe early to lock in. The lines are already moving. Are there any player props that you see, maybe any players from Atlanta, another team that you would lock in on any type of prop bet?
Yeah, I think the two that jump out to me are both rookies. And I'm not full disclosure, I'm not a big season-long player prop guy, but it's still worth discussing. I think Fernando Mendoza's player props are really intriguing this year because, with Las Vegas going out and getting Kirk Cousins and having Clint Kubiak being the head coach, I think there's a real situation brewing in Las Vegas with a brutal schedule for the Las Vegas Raiders that you might have some time for Fernando Mendoza kind of sitting and waiting there. And look, Kirk Cousins from the time he played in Washington. I'm a believer in Kirk Cousins for what he's capable of. I'm not saying he's an elite quarterback, but I do think what we saw towards the end of last year when he came in for Penix when he was hurt, showing some of the consistency that he has. So I think for me, looking at an over-under for Fernando Mendoza, which has come down a decent amount, right now it's 23.50 at FanDuel. And when you're making that bet, you're kind of making the bet on he's not going to play. And now a way that you could potentially get off of that, in theory, is if Fernando Mendoza, let's say, is announced as the starter going into week 4, that might be an opportunity to jump in on him to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Because this year, when you look at the Offensive Rookie of the Year market, it's wide open. Because as a Notre Dame fan, I hate the situation that Jeremiah Love is walking into down in Arizona. The quarterback room is a complete mess. It's the hardest schedule in all of the NFL. Look at the Arizona Cardinals' schedule. The first 13 games, they will be a touchdown or more underdog in. I mean, it is absolute brutality for Arizona, who has a win total of around, I think, 4.5 or 3.5 out there. So that gives me to my second player prop, and unfortunately, it hurts me to say it, but I think you have to look under on Jeremiah Love's rushing yards this year. A little similar, reminiscent, of what we saw a year ago with Ashton Genty in Las Vegas. Like, I think Ashton Genty's a talented guy. I think personally Jeremiah Love, pound for pound, is more talented and will prove that out over the long haul of his career. But you're walking into a really bad situation in Arizona, right? Where, as I alluded to, the quarterback room seems to be a disaster. Jacoby Brissett is unhappy. They draft Carson Beck in the third round. From all accounts, they wanted to, go out and get the Alabama quarterback. He gets drafted early by the Los Angeles Rams. So, yeah, it's you think about the situation down there, the challenges of the schedule. So the two highest profile rookies, if you will, in this year's class, Mendoza and Love, I both think struggle. And I think Mendoza, to be honest, I don't know when we see him outside of injury, maybe till the middle part of the season.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching Jeremiah Love play for Notre Dame as well, and I was a little bit bummed out as a Commanders fan when he didn't end up in Washington. I had my fingers crossed, but
that would have been cool, man.
Yeah,
I was hoping. There was a lot of late buzz, obviously, for him to go to Arizona. He ultimately, lands there in Arizona, and it's one of those situations where as someone who watches college football as much as I do, and as you mentioned, high-profile games, I think the talent was present, but when you're a bad team, a running back that high is kind of a luxury pick. So, I was a little bit concerned. But, all that being said, you think about what Washington was able to do getting Sonny Styles. I think Sonny Styles is a plug-and-play, green dot linebacker. And, when you look at, defensive rookie of the year, I think you can make the case for Sonny Styles because I think the volume of tackles is going to be there. You look at Reuben Bain, who dropped to Tampa Bay, or David Bailey, who goes to the Jets. Both those guys, from an odds perspective, are going to be higher because they're sack guys. But I think I look at a Sonny Styles, I look at a Caleb Downs, who went to Dallas. I think those guys are going to be on the field a ton in their rookie seasons. You saw it at Ohio State. They obviously were coached incredibly well. From all accounts, both those two guys, Styles and Downs, are incredible just from a mindset standpoint. So I do think Sonny Styles, I agree. It would have been great to see Jeremiah Love land in Washington, but I do think Sonny Styles, in my opinion, is an immediate impact player for a defense that we all know was a massive disappointment a year ago.
Yeah, agreed. 100% agreed. So looking way too far into the future here, I do want to ask you, if you had to fill out your projected playoff bracket today, which perennial postseason team from last year are you leaving out, and what dark horse team are you having take their spot?
All right. I did fill out my bracket. I don't have it in front of me right now, but looking at the futures right now, so I think the team that could be impressive this year, at least in the regular season. As much as it pains me to say it, I do think Dallas certainly could be a team that could be a one that wins that division. Just seems to be some things amiss a little bit in Philadelphia. So I know they won the division again last year, first back-to-back winner in, I think, 2 decades. But, that's one that I think could be a little bit better than anticipated. I'll be honest, and I think Seattle is a team that I'm curious. They're coming off of the Super Bowl. It was an amazing year. A couple of things go their way. I'm not saying they would have missed the playoffs, but a couple of things go their way. A crazy 2-point conversion that was called no good on the field, then it's overturned. Gives them the win over the Rams in the regular season. How much does that change the history there? So I think the Seattle Seahawks are a team that, maybe we see a little bit of regression there. And similarly, what do we see from the New England Patriots? Is there that Super Bowl hangover? Obviously, I don't want to get into it, but everything that happened with Mike Vrabel off the field this offseason, does that trickle its way into the locker room, whatnot? So I think the two teams that went to the Super Bowl a year ago, Seattle and New England, to me are kind of interesting to see if they take a little bit of a step back. And then, I mentioned a couple teams that I think certainly could make a run. Tennessee, maybe to win that division as a long shot, the AFC South, and then Atlanta as well. Maybe even New Orleans. I think New Orleans is kind of intriguing. And lastly, it's not a long shot, but I think this is the year we finally see Pittsburgh have a losing record. I know it's been going on forever. They won the division a year ago. I think the quarterback room is a nightmare. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has got much left in the tank. And I just look at the talent that's on that roster, and I have some questions there. Obviously, they got some big-time dudes defensively that we all know about, with T.J. Watt leading the charge there. But I think Pittsburgh takes a pretty big step back and, is probably looking at, in my opinion, around 6 or 7 wins this year.
Yeah, it's never good to go into a season as a team when you have a lot of question marks in the locker room. That I agree 100%. Take it from experience as a Washington fan.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Year after year, man. Year after year.
Yeah. Well, hey, Tim, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you today. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Thank you so much for coming on here, and we're looking forward to what you guys have over there at VSIN for the NFL season coming up, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
All right, Andy. Appreciate it, man.
It's the Coach's Corner.